The Relative Uncertainty of Reality by Daniel Swindlehurst. Okay, I have your avatar's age and sex preferences. Just a few more questions before I can create your personal universe. Which year would you like to visit? Can I go to 2016, please? The summer, just before the event. Of course. Remember, we want to create the perfect experience for you. If we're going to make your very own private universe, then we want to make sure it's just right. Now, what role would you like to have? You can be a film star, a famous athlete, a powerful CEO, the president. You said that I can be exactly whoever I want to be, no matter how unusual. Of course, you can live the life you want. You can be rich, poor, married, single. You can rule the world, save the world, or even destroy it. The only stipulation for the package you've chosen is that your avatar must be consistent with the reality of, she glanced at her display, the summer of 2016. So you can't have a version 2.0 body or superpowers or anything like that. You'd need to pay extra for such custom simulation. She paused and looked questioningly at me, ever the saleswoman. No, thanks, nothing like that. I'd actually like to be a research scientist, please. In fact, one of the scientists that was working on the project that caused the event. My interviewer's polished demeanor slipped for a second, and she looked briefly incredulous, before her mask of polite professionalism quickly returned. I continued as she recovered her composure. You see, I have always been fascinated by science, and I heard that in 2016 it was still carried out by actual people, before the AIs took over. I want to be one of those human scientists, please, and I want to be right there when it happened. Of course, a research scientist you will be. Such an unconventional role may take us a few more days to program, though. I quite understand. I bet scientist is a pretty unusual request. You're the first, actually. She arched an eyebrow in quiet judgment. Are you sure this will feel real? I can assure you of that. The weather, the food you eat, the people you meet, all will feel indistinguishable from reality. But the people, they won't be actual, real people, will they? No, there's no need. Our procedural algorithms ensure that as the simulation winks into existence, each of its inhabitants will be created with a unique consciousness, personality, and a set of rich memories that they'll think are genuine. They'll believe that they've lived for years, they'll go about their lives working, eating, falling in love, dying, all without realizing that they're composed of digital code rather than flesh and blood. It sounds very impressive. It is and it isn't. It feels absolutely real, but you'd be amazed how little memory it takes, how many of these simulations we run at the same time. Not all are set in 2016, of course. We run some modern-day simulations, but mostly people want to experience past lives like you. Many people go much further back, though. Maybe after you've spent a month in 2016, you'll travel with us again. Maybe further back next time. The hard sell again. We'll see, I replied politely, but without commitment. Is this strictly ethical? I mean, you're creating 7 billion people who think they're alive. Then, after 1 month, you end them all with a flick of a switch. Don't worry. Remember, they're not real people, they're just code. There's nothing but a long string of ones and zeros. And besides, we create and end hundreds of billions of them every day across all our various simulations. But don't any of them ever realize that they're not real? She frowned and looked a little impatient. Was I being rude asking these questions? I was the client, though, so I looked at her and waited for a response. It happens, but very rarely, usually in individuals on the fringes of the simulated societies, the odd artist, but most often with scientists, coincidentally. In the past, it occasionally caused a few problems, but we quickly realized how to deal with it. We invented the uncertainty principle. I'm afraid I'm not familiar with that particular principle. Is it from quantum physics? I'd read a fair amount of pre-event science, but I'd never heard of it. That's because it doesn't exist in the real world. In our simulations, inquisitive scientists were sometimes able to delve so deeply into their worlds that they discovered the code with which their artificial existences were created. So, we've introduced an arbitrary limit to the degree of precision by which the simulated particle physicists can measure their world. If they try to measure one aspect of a particle, say, its position, then they find that they can't measure another aspect, like its momentum. It creates a layer of fuzz that neatly prevents them from digging too deeply and discovering the underlying code. It was my turn to look at her incredulously. Sounds a bit fanciful, I know. It's just science fiction, though, but it seems to do the trick. She fixed me with a mock conspiratorial look. And remember, if you ever doubt the world in which you live, just measure the properties of a fundamental particle. If you can measure both momentum and position, then no need to worry. You're in the real world. She laughed.